Two taxes, same state, same rule book. We got to vote on one of them, but the other got the door slammed shut before it even reached the ballot. In 2024, Washington put a tax in front of voters. We voted, we kept it almost 2-1. Then 2 years later, the legislature drops a brand new 9.9% income tax. And when people tried to put that one on the ballot, it was denied. No referendum, no let the voters decide. Here's the part that's gonna bug you all day. It was legal. It wasn't a loophole. It wasn't a scandal. It was the actual rules working exactly how they were built to work. So either Washington politics is broken or the rule book is way stranger than you think. And I'll spare you the suspense. It's the rule book. And it comes down to one court case from 1933, a clock most people don't know exists, and 5 names on your ballot this November that nobody's talking about. My name's Kennon. I help people move to Washington State, and I get a question on repeat from almost everyone who's eyeballing a move up here. Does Washington State have an income tax? And the short answer is kind of. And the long answer, buckle up, because it's a better story than it has the right to be, and almost everybody gets it wrong. By the end of this video, you'll understand this system better than half the people who vote on it. You'll understand the bill, the 90-year-old rule, why you won one tax fight and got shut out of the next, and the election this fall that could flip the whole board. So let's get into it. To understand how this tax got past you, you have to understand how the sausage gets made in Olympia. And fair warning, it's nothing like the cartoon version from your high school civics class. Nobody stands up and gives a big speech. It's mostly deadlines and committees. Now, stay with me though, because this boring sounding part is the whole trick. Washington's legislature meets up every single year, but the sessions aren't the same length. In odd years, 2025, 2027, they get a long session, 105 days, because that's when they write the big 2-year budget. In even years, like 2026, they get a short session, just 60 days. 60 days to do everything. That clock matters a lot. Hold that thought. A bill starts as an idea, a legislator drops it in either the House or the Senate, it gets a number, and you've seen these, I've talked about them on my channel. SB means Senate bill, HB means House bill. The income tax we're talking about is SB 6346. It's a Senate bill. From there, it goes to a committee, a small group of legislators who specialize in that topic. Taxes go to the money committees, Ways and Means in the Senate, Finance in the House. The committee holds a public hearing, debates it, maybe amends it, and then votes on whether to send it to the full chamber. And right there, at that very first step, is where most bills go to die, which brings me to the gauntlet. Here's the brutal truth. Most bills introduced in Olympia never become law. Hundreds get filed every session, a handful survive. It's like the Hunger Games for legislation. Why? Because of something called cutoff dates. The legislature sets a calendar of deadlines. Hard walls a bill has to clear or it's dead for the entire year. There's a deadline to get out of your committee, a deadline to pass your home chamber, a deadline to clear committee in the other chamber. Miss any wall and the bill flatlines. There's no vote, there's no debate, it's gone. Now, layer that on top of a 60-day short session, and the clock is brutal. Every bill is racing the calendar. And a tax bill has to do this twice. It has to pass the Senate, then go to the House, and run the whole gauntlet again, committee and all. If the second chamber changes a single word, it has to go back. Only when both chambers pass the exact same version does it land on the governor's desk for a signature. So when something as massive as a brand new income tax makes it all the way through that meat grinder in a 60-day session, that's not an accident. That's a coordinated, deliberate, leadership-backed effort. Remember that, because the timing becomes the whole story later on. But before we get to 2026, we have to go back to 1933 because there's a 90-year-old rule sitting underneath all of this, and it breaks everything. 1932, the Great Depression. Times were rough, And during that time, Washington voters passed an initiative to create a graduated income tax. Tax the rich more, tax everyone else less. And they didn't just squeak that through. It won with around 70% of the vote. That's not a majority, that's a mandate. The people spoke very loudly. And then 1 year later, the Washington Supreme Court took that landslide and dropped it straight into the trash can. That case was called Culliton versus Chase, 1933. And the logic is the one thing you need to tattoo on your brain because it runs everything that's happened since. The court ruled that income is property. Your paycheck, in the eyes of the Washington Constitution, is property. Same category as your house or your car. It's really weird. Now, why does that matter? Because the Washington Constitution in Article 7 says property has to be taxed uniformly, same rate for everybody. So a graduated income tax where a millionaire pays a higher rate than a teacher is unconstitutional. You literally can't do it under that ruling. So for over 90 years, that's been the law. Washington is one of a handful of states with no income tax. And it's not because politicians never wanted one, it's because a 1933 court decision says income is property and you can't graduate a property tax. Now hold that idea, income is property, right next to the bill process I just showed you. Because the people who want an income tax have spent decades trying to figure out one thing. How do you get around Culliton versus Chase? And in the last few years, they found a door, two of them actually. Door number one shows up in 2021. The legislature passes a 7% tax on capital gains. That's the profit you make selling things like stocks, bonds, business interests, but only on gains above roughly $250,000 a year. Now, if income is property and you can't graduate a property tax, how is this legal? Here's the trick. They didn't call it an income tax, they called it an excise tax. A tax on the transaction of selling the asset, not on the asset itself. Same money, different label. And the label is the whole ball game. And in 2023, in a case called Quinn versus State, the Washington Supreme Court bought it. They ruled the capital gains tax is a valid excise tax, not a property tax. So Culliton doesn't apply. It stands. Opponents tried to take it to the US Supreme Court. In early 2024, the US Supreme Court declined to even hear the appeal. So door closed, the tax was locked in. So then opponents tried the last tool they had, the ballot box. Initiative 2109 in November 2024 asked voters to repeal the capital gains tax, and the people voted to keep it by about 63 to 37. So here's your first big takeaway, and it's important. On the capital gains tax, you got to vote. And not only did you get to vote, a clear majority chose to keep it. That's democracy working exactly how you'd expect. Remember that, because the income tax that came next, completely different story. But first, the legal stuff I'm required to say, and something that actually matters a lot if you own property here. Quick, honest disclaimer, I'm a real estate agent. I'm not a CPA, I'm not an attorney, so nothing in this video is tax or legal advice. If any of this hits your situation, make sure you talk to a professional about your specific numbers. I'm just here to explain the system, not to file your tax returns or give you any type of legal advice. But here's the piece that's directly relevant to a lot of you watching, especially if you own a home or you're thinking about buying one in the South Sound or anywhere in Washington. That capital gains tax we just talked about, it does not apply to the sale of real estate. So selling your home is specifically excluded. That's a big deal, and it's one of the most common things people relocating here get wrong. I get calls every month from folks moving from California or out of Texas asking, if Washington keeps adding taxes, am I gonna get crushed when I sell my house? And honest answer on the real estate side, no, you're not gonna get crushed. Washington still has no tax on your wages and no tax on selling your home. And that's a big reason people keep landing in places like Washington. If you're weighing a move to the South Sound and you want a straight, no spin breakdown of what your cost of living and tax picture would actually look like, that is my job. So drop a comment or hit the link in my description and I'll walk you through it. No pressure, no sales pitch, I promise. Okay, back to the part that should kind of make you sit up, because the income tax they passed in 2026 was built specifically so you wouldn't get the vote you got last time. March 30th, 2026, Governor Ferguson signed Senate Bill 6346 into law. And for the first time in nearly a century, Washington has an income tax on the books. Here's what it does. It's a 9.9% tax on household income over $1 million a year. And to be precise, it only hits the dollars above $1 million. If your household makes $1.2 million, you're taxed 9.9% on the $200,000 over the line, not the whole thing. The threshold gets adjusted for inflation. It'll take effect January 1st, 2028, and the state will start collecting in 2029. Supporters, including the governor, make a real argument here, and I'll give it to you straight. Washington has one of the most regressive tax systems in the country, meaning lower income families pay a bigger share of their income in taxes than the wealthy do because we lean so hard on sales tax. They say this tax hits less than 0.5% of residents, so about 21,000 filers, mostly in wealthy King County zip codes. And it funds things like the Working Families Tax Credit, childcare, and small business tax relief. Opponents make an equally real argument. They say it's unconstitutional under Culliton versus Chase. Income is property. This is a graduated tax, case closed. And they argue the $1 million threshold is a foot in the door that can be lowered later to reach everybody. There's already a lawsuit that's challenging this. I would say that both of these are legitimate positions, and I'm not here to tell you which one is right. That's your call, not mine. But here's the maneuver, the trap door. And this part is pure process, no opinion required. It's the reason for this whole video. The bill includes something called a necessity clause. It declares the tax necessary for the support of state government. And that one paragraph is what takes your vote off the table. Here's why. When the legislature passes something you don't like, you've got 3 tools. Let's run through them because the income tax knocks out the easiest one on purpose. So tool 1 is the referendum. This is the fast one. If the legislature passes a law, citizens can file a referendum to put it on the ballot and let voters approve or reject it. It needs signatures equal to about 4% of the last governor's vote. In round numbers, roughly 154,000 signatures. That's the cheap, quick way to challenge a brand new law. Tool number 2, the initiative. This is the heavier one. It's how citizens write their own law or repeal an existing one. That's what I-2109 was. But it costs more to qualify. Signatures equal to about 8%, roughly 309,000 signatures, double the referendum. Tool number 3 is the lawsuit. Take it to court, argue it's unconstitutional, slow, it's expensive, you need a judge to agree with you. Now, here's the trapdoor. Washington's Constitution gives you that referendum power, but it carves out an exception. Laws for the support of state government are not subject to referendum. And revenue laws, taxes, have long fallen under that exception. So that necessity clause in SB 6346, declaring the tax necessary to support state government, it drops the income tax right into the no referendum bucket. Opponents sued, arguing this was a deliberate workaround to dodge the voters. And on May 4th, 2026, the Washington Supreme Court ruled the necessity clause is valid. The tax raises revenue for state government, so it falls under the exception, no referendum, period. Now, I want to be fair here because this is where most videos overhype it. The court didn't invent some sneaky new power. Tax measures in Washington have generally never been subject to referendum. Even the bill's own lead sponsor said he didn't think the clause was technically necessary, that it mostly just sped up getting a clean court ruling. So they blocked your vote is true in effect. Your fastest, cheapest tool is gone, but it's consistent with how the rules have worked for a long time. And here's the key nuance. Tool 1 is dead, but tool 2 is still alive. You can still try to repeal it with an initiative. It just costs you double the signatures and a lot more money. The door isn't bolted shut. It's just a much heavier door now. So how does this compare to other states? Because Washington's setup is genuinely unusual. Here's something people don't realize. Not every state even gives you these tools. The whole let the citizens overrule a law concept, only about half the states have it. Roughly 26 have some form of statewide initiative or referendum. In the other half, once your legislature passes something, that's the end of the conversation. Your move is to wait until the next election and then re-vote. So Washington handing you any direct say already puts us ahead of half of the country, income tax carve out and all. And the way states build their legislature gets weird really fast. Take Nebraska. Every other state runs 2 chambers, a House and a Senate. Nebraska runs 1, a single chamber called the unicameral with just 49 senators, and it's nonpartisan. No D, no R next to their names on the ballot. 1 House, no party labels, nothing else like it in America. Or look at Texas. Washington's legislature meets every single year. Texas, theirs meets once every 2 years for 140 days. That's it. They cram an entire state's worth of lawmaking into 140 days, then lock the doors and go home for almost 2 years. Imagine your job only existed 5 months out of every 24 months. Why does this matter for our story? Because the design of the system determines how easy it is to pass or block a tax. A part-time, every other year legislature like Texas's moves slowly by design. Washington's annual full-time legislature with a leadership that's organized can move a major income tax through a 60-day session and lock it down. The structure is the strategy. So where does that leave you, the person actually living here? Let's make it practical. Let me boil this down to what actually touches your life. If you earn a normal wage, even a really good one, the income tax does not touch you today. It's 9.9% only on household income over $1 million. For the overwhelming majority of us, your paycheck is untaxed by the state, same as always. If you sell stocks or a business with big gains over about $250,000, the 7% capital gains tax may apply, but again, selling your home is excluded. Real estate is safe. And the big picture takeaway, Washington just crossed a line it hadn't crossed since 1933. There's now an income tax on the books and a court filing that says you can't referendum it away. Whether that stays at millionaires only or moves over time is the open question, and the answer depends on the courts. Which is exactly why the most important thing on your ballot this fall isn't a tax at all, it's a set of judges. Here's the piece nobody's paying attention to, and it's the most important thing in this entire video. Everything we just talked about, Culliton, the income is property rule, whether the 9.9 tax survives its lawsuit, whether the threshold could ever drop, all of it comes down to 9 people. The 9 justices of the Washington Supreme Court. And this November, on the 2026 ballot, 5 of those 9 seats are up for election. 5 of 9. That's a majority of the court turning over in one election. Regular terms expiring plus a wave of retirements all landing at once. That almost never happens. It's the most consequential judicial election this state has seen in decades, and most voters are gonna move right past it. There's even a name for it, undervotes, where people leave the judge race blank because they don't recognize a single name. In 2024, there were hundreds of thousands of blank judicial ballots. Hundreds of thousands. Here's the math that makes this all matter. The income tax needs the court's support to survive its legal challenge. And Culliton, the 90-year-old precedent that's the only thing standing between us and a broader income tax, would take 5 votes to overturn. So when a majority of the court is sitting on one ballot, you, the voter, are deciding the future of taxation in this state, not through a tax measure, through judges most people have never heard of. So let's bring it home. Who actually gets the final word on taxes in Washington? It's not as simple as the people or the politicians. It's a relay race. The legislature writes the law, and they can build it like they did with SB 6346 to dodge a quick referendum. The people still hold the initiative, a harder, more expensive tool, but we've used it before. And sitting above all of it, the courts decide what's even constitutional in the first place, and you elect those courts. So the honest answer to "they blocked your vote" is this. They blocked your fastest vote, the referendum, but you still have the slower, heavier tools. And the most powerful vote of all isn't on any taxes here. It's on the 5 judges who get to decide whether any of this stands. Whatever you think about a 9.9% tax on millionaires, and reasonable people land on both sides of that, the thing I want you to walk away with is this. The system isn't random, and it isn't rigged in some cartoon way. It's a set of rules written down that reward whoever understands them best. Now you understand them better than most people in this state. So if you found this useful, the best thing you can do is make sure you actually fill out those judicial races on your ballot in November instead of leaving them blank. And if you're someone weighing a move to Washington, trying to figure out your real tax and cost of living picture, that's what I do every day. I help people make decisions like that and understand decisions like that on a regular basis. My name's Kennon. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.